the heart and soul behind every business. Stories. Welcome to Business Story of the Week, hosted by me, Joshua Laurie. From setbacks to comebacks, from tragedies to triumphs, we inspire entrepreneurs through conversations that matter. Witness the magic that turns dreams into reality. Whether it's your career, business, or life, your success is always one story away. This is Business Story of the Week. And welcome back, folks. Welcome back to Business Story of the Week. I am your host, Joshua. And today's question is: can a blend of empathy and commerce reshape the future of business? Is it even possible to blend empathy and commerce? I love that question. It's quite profound. And I feel like we are going to have ourselves a profound episode today, especially with our guest, Judah Freed. Our guest, Judah Freed, is a seasoned journalist and the award winning author of Making Global Sense, Grounded Hope for Democracy, and The Earth Inspired by Thomas Paine's Common Sense. We're really going to dig deep into that today. He is the editor of The Beacon from the Thomas Paine National Historical Association. He also serves as the National Coalition steering committee for Banned Books Week in September 2024. There's a lot to dig into this today. Judah, thank you for coming onto the show. How are you doing?
I'm grateful to be here.
Judah, we could start with this in many different ways, and there's a lot that I want to ask you today. But first off, your book, Making Global Sense, it draws inspiration from Thomas Paine's Common Sense. First of all,
Yes.
what drew you initially to Thomas Paine's work and how it influenced your perspective in global democracy and leadership? But also, where did this all begin? Like, why Thomas Paine in the first place? What is the story of Judah Freed?
Huh. Well, my relationship with pain probably began when I was younger than you.
Mhm.
And he was taught in school back then,
Oh,
which is not so much anymore, sorry to
no,
say.
not today. Yeah.
And um, and I discovered that here's a writer that changed the world. And there's been
Mhm.
others. Um,
Mhm.
uh, Mr. Adam Smith changed the world with his writing,
Yes, of
for
course.
example.
Yes, of course.
And you know, lots of books have changed the world. So I'm a believer in books and changing the world.
Hmm.
So that's the pain first came to me when I was writing about digital media
Right.
back when the internet was first coming online and they were getting organized. I
Yes,
was
yes,
among those voices who was inside the industry calling for internet democracy.
yes.
The whole idea that the people who are going to participate with the internet should have a vote in how it's run.
Of course. Of course.
I still hold to that principle.
Wow, beautiful.
Um, And a lot of that was centered around the development of the domain name and numbers. If you go to my very old website,
Mhm.
archive, media-visions.com, and search the archive for the articles I wrote back then, you'll understand that I had used pain to write a short essay.
Mm.
And I had basically just copied almost line by line his essay to write an essay on let's have democracy on the internet. That's how I first got
Mm.
into it. Then after nine
Interesting.
eleven,
Whoa.
then after 9/11, I saw our country, this country, and actually most countries in the world,
Mhm.
tipping totalitarian to fight terrorism, and a lot of human rights being violated in the
Mhm.
process of making us secure. And
Mhm.
so you talk about the balance of empathy and commerce.
Mhm.
There's also a balance between safety and freedom.
Of course, of course. And
And
today's
so that's what I started to explore. And so the book first was just global sense,
Mhm.
and that did okay. And then I went through cancer
I'm
in
sorry.
around 16, still dealing with it some, which is why I'm such a handsome, skinny guy.
Mhm.
And
Good
um,
looking though, looking young still.
I ain't going anywhere yet.
Let's go.
So, yeah, but at any rate, so now it's making global sense. As I recovered from cancer, I got fresh insights about life and death.
Mm-hmm.
And I added to the book a lot of memoir sections
Mm-hmm.
that sort of tells the story behind the book and how the ideas developed.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just the theory in the book, but there's also the story behind the theory.
Yes, yes, of course.
If anyone wants to see what it looks like, this is the book, and
There you
the
go.
cover's all beat up. I just came home from New York, and this is the only copy I had left in my
Mm-hmm.
luggage. So,
I love it.
um, yeah. But anyway, so this is it. It's online where fine books are sold, and that's about as much as a pitch as you're going to get.
So again, the
You know,
name of the
let
book
the experience.
is award-winning, making global sense, grounded hope for democracy and the earth, inspired by Thomas Paine's Common Sense. And this is quite important, especially I love how you've applied this, the common sense of Thomas Paine, again, one of the people that changed the world, one of the writers that truly changed the world. And now you applied this online. You applied this actually in the modern times. You're trying to apply that same democracy in the internet. And you're talking about safety and freedom as well, and the perversion of our privacy, really. And uh, uh, Judah, it hasn't gotten better. It's not. It's heartbreaking. But talk to us a little bit about this
Yeah.
global sensibility and how it shapes not just business decisions at all levels, but how about society at large when it comes to, you know, ethical marketing, to customer relations, but to, again, to our personal daily lives as well.
So probably the core essence is the notion that everything is interconnected with everything else.
Right.
Part
Okay.
of made the
Wow. I
internet
love
so
that.
powerful is that connectivity.
I love that.
And I believe that just the fact of us being worldwide connected on the World Wide Web
Hmm.
induces a global sensibility, induces a
Hmm.
sense that we're all on this planet together,
Hmm.
and that we're
Hmm.
all interconnected. The magic comes when we realize that because we are naturally interconnected, we're naturally
Right.
one, if you want to use a more mystical term, that
Of course.
oneness idea, or wholeness, or coherence. There's a lot of terms to describe that.
Right.
Um, it's also in physics, they'll refer to that interconnectivity with such phrases as quantum entanglements, right? It's
Of
just
course.
everything's connected to everything else.
Hmm. Hmm.
In the East, they talk about Indra's net, and we're all like jewels in Indra nets reflecting each other.
Hmm.
We're
Hmm.
all interconnected. And
Of
so if
course.
that's the case, that makes us naturally powerful. Because if everything that I think, feel, say, and do sends out ripples, like
That's right.
radio waves,
Yes.
so to speak. And if I'm
Yes.
also receiving like an antenna, everyone else's, that
Hmm.
means we're interactive, just with our thoughts, what we think, what we feel emotionally, what we put out,
Hmm.
how we behave, the gestures we use, the body language we use, everything.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's all communication.
Hmm.
It all
Hmm.
comes down to communication.
Absolutely.
Commerce and communication are interrelated.
Of course.
And so I would say the way it connects is that, well, let me be helpful to give you some context, I think.
Oh, please, please, please.
Paine grew out of, Paine grew out of the Enlightenment. He was pretty much the voice of the Enlightenment, which was the 17th, late 16th, early 17th, and into the late 17th century, 18th century movement, rather, because he was an 18th century figure. It grew
Yes,
out of
yes.
the 1600s and 1700s. Um, the, Before the Age of Enlightenment came the Age of Reason, which oddly enough was actually a rationalization for a despotism.
Yes.
If you look at like the
Oh.
writers there, Hobbes and people like that, that basically said life is nasty, brutish, and short, so we need a king to keep us safe,
Mm.
right? And so the Age of Reason, in terms, had come out of the Reformation, which was a revolution against the autocracy of the church.
Right.
Well, it was really one king who wanted to be able to get divorced and have more sire an ancestry, but historically, Henry
Hmm.
VIII.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
anyway, so you had like the Reformation that grew out of uh, this whole Christian revival that came about, oddly enough, from the restoration of the Greek and Roman writings.
Yeah.
The philosophy came from them, which had been kept sacred and not secret, but necessarily, but at least protected by Islam for centuries.
Mm. Mm.
And those books were sacked during the Crusades, and the West then got changed by those books changing the world.
Interesting.
Okay.
Interesting.
So, so about the same time that Paine did Common Sense to talk about how we need to be able to have freedom of thought and freedom of, we should be in charge of our own governments, not a king. And he
Hmm.
went through all these arguments against monarchy and hereditary succession.
Yes. Yes.
I talk about them in terms of alpha male rule and authority addiction,
Yes. Yes.
which
Yes.
is another conversation.
Hmm.
Um, but 3 months after Paine published Common Sense, Adam Smith published the first volume of The Wealth of Nations.
Okay. Okay.
Now, Adam Smith has been largely misunderstood as much as Paine has been misunderstood.
Hmm.
So a few facts about Adam Smith that if folks do their homework, they can get for themselves.
Yes, of course.
He was, in many respects, progressive, a social progressive, same as Paine.
Yes.
Most
Yes.
most
Yes.
everybody in the Enlightenment were what today we would call progressive.
Hmm.
And for example, he talked about how government exists largely to protect the wealthy, the
Of
property
course.
classes,
Yes. Hmm.
and he also talked about the morality of that
Yes, of
because
course.
before he published uh, Wealth of Nations, he first published a book called The Theory of Moral Sentiments, where
Mm.
basically it said what you know something is moral if you put yourself in that other person's shoes and you figure it's okay.
Yes.
Classic golden rule stuff, right?
Of course. Of course.
And so what happened is that he published his utopian vision 20 years after he published his map, his compass for that map.
Mm-hmm.
People forgot his compass.
Right.
So you're talking about the ethics in business. If
Yes.
we'd really pay attention to Adam Smith and really behave with sympathy, just imagine empathy. Imagine how business would be different.
That's true. That is true.
And so that awareness that we're all interconnected is what makes it conscious. That's where
Mm.
conscious commerce comes into the
Wow.
thing.
Beautiful.
And from and you talk, I'm sort of carrying away here, but you raise all these questions. I'm trying to address them. Um,
Precisely.
the
It's
whole the
okay.
whole notion of socialism versus capitalism,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that's a binary choice.
Mm.
If you really think global, you don't get trapped in binary.
There you go.
It's not
There
either
you
or,
go.
it's yes and.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, this okay. So first of all, if I'm gonna dial it
I've
back a
given you a
little
lot to
bit,
go with.
yeah, yeah, it's okay. But I love it though. Like so, the interconnectedness consciousness is where it all comes from because it actually makes us powerful being interconnected and really driving away from that, especially the historical impacts and the ideas of Paine and Adam Smith was very impactful in 1776. Um, their combined work addresses a lot of common misconceptions and a lot of like what do you call this, like the values and how you say this against the monarchy, like having to have to govern our own ourselves, but also I think you really delve down in the core in there, which is empathy. How much different the world would be if we empathize with each other, if we connected with each other, not just, in business, not just in business, but society at large and personal and personal with each other. That's all basically, right? Yeah. Is there with your extensive experience in life, right? And you've seen a lot, and you've been a part of a lot of these movements and a lot of these changes throughout time. Can you share examples of this emphatic shift from predation to service to client
Oh boy.
loyalty, business wise or society? Has it changed? Has it gotten better? And how much more can we do to influence this emphatic shift?
Okay, another big series of questions. I
Oh,
love it.
please, yes.
Might be useful to sort of like put a frame on it.
Mm,
Prior to Paine and Smith,
yes.
um, it was like the king was in charge of everything, and whatever the king said went.
Yes,
And the
of
king could
course.
put his children on the throne,
Mm,
and that was divine right.
yep.
Um, Paine came along, and he gave all that like a knockout blow.
Boom.
And even
Mhm.
though there's still despots on the planet, and there's still, in terms of numbers, there's more authoritarian countries right now than there are democratic countries, but it's close. when you take all the hybrid countries and
Yes.
put
At
together.
least there's
That's
there's a
cool.
bit of change, right?
Yeah, so Paine knocked that old model of a king being in charge on his backside, shall we say.
Mm, mm,
Then along comes Adam Smith, and he does the same thing for economics because the
mm.
political system and the economic system are not the same.
Of course, of course.
You can have capitalism with democracy or a tyranny. You can have socialism with a democracy or a tyranny. They're separate.
Oh.
They're interconnected, but they're separate.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so he took that whole notion of mercantilism, which is that you measure the wealth of a nation by the gold that's in its treasury, which
Yes.
is why Europeans plundered the world.
Yep.
In some ways, we're still feeling the effects of that, right?
Yes, precisely.
Um, and and he said, no, you judge the wealth of a country by the amount of commerce that goes on.
Mm.
And so that we call the gross domestic product, that's the national wealth.
Yes.
That's why you hear GDP stuff talked about all the time on the news, but they never connect to what it is, right? Because news people, they don't always, they know their jobs well if they do it well, but that doesn't mean they see the whole picture of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so along comes Paine and Adam Smith, and it's like they go boom, boom, and it's like
Yep.
a 1-2 punch,
Yes.
and our
Yes.
world is still going from the combination blow,
Mm-hmm. It's a
right?
combination
And
blow.
and it takes centuries for this kind of major cultural shift to soak in.
Okay.
And now along comes the internet, which was as big of a transformation on society as the discovery of fire, the move from
Yes.
agricultural to from wandering around to being agricultural, the move to the industrialization. Now
Yes.
we're getting AI, which is going to be just as much of a huge impact,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
and it's probably
Massive.
more threatening than some of these others if we don't control it.
Precisely.
And the machines
Precisely.
we invent to serve us don't need us to do what happens to us.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I am
Talk about ethics.
I'm reminded by uh, this post or this viral post that's going around it, making the rounds once again. It's like saying, I want AI to do my laundry, I want AI to do my tasks. What I don't want AI to do is to take over my job. And I think that does a lot more as well when it comes to our empathy, right? Like
I
we don't,
track that. I sometimes feel like John Henry, dealing with it. Remember the steam engine, John Henry, and
yeah, yeah,
American
yeah.
Legend.
Hmm.
Um, and there's also issues around generative AI,
Of course.
is you know copyright,
Yep.
loss of
Hmm.
jobs for creatives.
Hmm. Hmm.
On the flip side of it is that outside of the generative stuff, where there's sorry about that.
No problem.
I
No
meant to.
problem.
I apologize. So the world is calling, and I'll answer as I can. Um,
That's fine.
there, yeah, for those times that we can um, listen to the bell of the times. That's
Yeah.
distracting. I apologize, folks.
Okay, it's fine.
You're okay. You're okay
You
to
can
edit.
answer it
Um,
if you want, so we could
no,
pause it
it's
for
now
a
gone to
bit.
voicemail.
Okay, all right,
And see,
fantastic.
there's a
All
place
right,
where artificial intelligence is good. It knows after a certain number of rings, it goes to voicemail.
there you go.
You know,
Hmm.
artificial machine intelligence is wonderful for research, for example. If we able
Of
to
course,
take huge, vast amounts of data and compile it.
of
I'm
course,
still doing with cancer. There's
hmm
developments coming down the pike that are
of course,
amazing,
hmm
and machine intelligence is helping to figure it out.
of course.
I'm fine with putting machines to work. I've been an early adopter of machinery all the time, but the only thing I haven't done really adopted is TikTok because I don't trust the software and my privacy. If that was solved, I'd be on there.
Of
You know,
course, of
um,
course.
the issues are how do we choose to use the technologies we have
Yes.
if we're aware that we can like combine the political system of how we govern our behavior
Hmm.
with the economic system we use to fund our societies.
Hmm.
That gives us more freedom of choice,
Hmm.
in my view. We can
Hmm.
decide. It
Precisely.
doesn't have to be binary either or. We can just be
Exactly.
conscious. I mean, commerce is much more older than capitalism or socialism.
Yes, that is
You know,
true. That is
Yeah.
true.
Here, you want some clams for your halibut?
Well, this brings us really to another advocate, to something that you advocate about, which is what you call conscious commerce. It's just as a way,
Yes.
it's like it's thinking binary, you said, like capitalism versus socialism. There is a way to transcend this dualism of capitalism versus socialism because both have flaws, right? But right now we're really being consumed by capitalism, I feel like. Could you elaborate on what conscious commerce is, first and foremost, and how can it lead to
It's
more
yeah.
ethical and an emphatic
A few
shift?
ways, what it is, and a few ways we can use it.
Please.
It's doing business, or even a nonprofit. It includes both the private and public sector, and the government,
Hmm.
and everything else. It's choosing to be aware that we're connected and letting that inform our decision making.
I
Because if
see.
I know that what I do affects the planet as well as everybody else, and what I do to others, I do to myself,
Interesting. Of
when we
course.
see that connectivity, we're just going to behave better.
Of course. Yeah.
Greed
Of
won't
course.
seem to be so important. See, that's why I
Mm.
talk about this authority addiction, because we get attached to getting approval from some validation outside of ourselves.
Yes.
Wealth, money, power, glory, all
Hmm.
those, you know, what were they used to be called to Christians? They called them the seven deadly sins, right?
Yes.
It's
Yes.
all
Yes.
those validations from outside the self instead of finding oneself and being comfortable in one's own skin, right?
Yes. Hmm.
So that I
Hmm.
can just be okay as I am.
Yes.
A lot of
Yes.
my cancer has been from within.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I believe we can do the same things in organizations.
Of course.
And the key, whether you're talking about politics or you're talking about an organization for business or nonprofit service or anything, any kind of organization, how do you do the decision making and how do you do the problem solving?
Of
There's
course.
lots of really good scientifically, academically tested problem solving methods and models that people can
Hmm.
learn.
Hmm.
We don't. We don't want to take responsibility for having to do the homework, right? It's
Nope.
easier to let someone else do it for us.
Absolutely
But
not.
if we do, because good problem solving is engagement.
Yes. Of
You
course.
got to like brainstorm all the possible solutions, which means nobody gets canceled, nobody gets silenced, no censorship. You just put all the ideas out there in brainstorming without judgments, and then you evaluate them.
Yes.
What's
Of
the most
course.
practical, and how does this fit with our values, and how does this fit with our goals, right? And then you select the problem, the solution for your problem that you want. You define the problem. You look at your options. You select the solution you think you can use, and then you try it.
Yeah.
And then you evaluate the results fairly,
Hmm.
without ego or bias. Because
Yes.
you don't have to be right, you have to do right.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And and then if that doesn't work, then you go back to step one. You start over and you redefine your problem, and you come up with new things. And you keep trying.
Of
It's a
course.
progressive, engaged process.
I
So the
love
way,
that
same thing,
progression.
decision making
Yes.
in organizations.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
if organizations, there was a really popular idea some years ago called total quality management,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Full quality.
TQM. The
Mm-hmm.
thing that I liked about it is because it really introduced the concept of teams.
Yes, of course.
But unfortunately, that got distorted into one guy's in charge of the team. And you do whatever you're told, or you're off the team.
There you go.
We've seen the prior president of our country talk about teamwork as an excuse to go along with me. But that's not teamwork. That's dictatorship. That's despotism. That's having a king in charge.
Yes, of course.
Real democratic decision making, what's been called participatory management. It means that everybody has a say, and you try as much as possible to make decisions by as close to consensus as you can. Because the
Mm,
more buy-in there is in a decision, the more people are going to commit themselves to fulfilling that vision,
wow.
rather than just doing what the boss tells you because you want to keep your job.
Of course, of course, of course.
It's a different frame of mind. It's the idea that people are working because they want to do something, they want to contribute, they want to use their talents and skills for more than paying the bills.
I love that. I love that. And here's the thing now. I think that's what we really lost today, right? We're losing that kind of wanting to, like you said, doing our homework and wanting to take different sides. No one gets silenced. We're just going to go through it. We're going to learn it. But again, that's kind of like the disadvantage and the con that we're
Hmm.
facing today, that everything's so much easier and we're allowing ourselves to be misinformed because it's just easier to take extreme sides. Um,
Well, I think I
this.
know why we're doing that.
Oh, please. Hmm.
Because what's going on right now in the world is so terrifying
Hmm. It is. It is.
that the amount of work it takes to really be responsible in the world, be responsible for your own liberty.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a lot of work, and especially with the climate change because of what we've done over the last few centuries, let
Yes.
alone taking responsibility for that. It's easier to be in denial. It's easier to just go along to get along. It's easier to get your validation from some being part of some mind locked group, go down some rabbit hole
Mm.
among your friends,
Yes.
and have that acceptance and love in the community
Oh,
than it is to
that's true.
really have a free mind
Yeah.
and really be, practice the notions of free thought. Get evidence, get, do your homework,
Yeah. And
find out what's true, not just what other people say is true. Don't rely on secondary sources all the time, let alone, these silos that have us thinking the way that everyone else thinks, or at least everybody in our little silo thinks.
that's true. And it
That's
kind of ties
bad.
back to what you said and like how we're interconnected as species and it makes us powerful, makes us allows us to connect with each other and to empathize with each other. But the problem is, it's just being done differently today because we just want to feel like we belong. We just want to feel like we're heard.
Yes,
We just want to feel like we're valued. So we just look for these places that echo like silos that echo our beliefs.
yes,
And
and it's so primal.
it is very
Yes.
primal. It's so natural to just want that. We're delving a little bit further away from the business side of things, but I feel like
Well, actually,
this,
this is the heart of good business, in my judgment.
there you
Because if
go.
we can have this kind of mindset,
Hmm.
we're going to behave differently in the workplace. We're
Of
going to treat our
course,
coworkers differently
of
because
course,
they're equal to us no matter what our titles.
of course.
You know,
Right.
because if we're getting our validation from some role that we have or some power that we exert, then that's
Mhm.
not being true to ourselves or anyone else we're working with. We're not being fair to them, and we're not being fair to ourselves.
Oh, it's beautiful. I love that. I love that. Um,
And so to be able to have group decision making and really get enrollment, then that whole notion of democracy is ownership.
there you go.
Because when I participate in doing the homework and making the decision in collaboration with others, I may not always be satisfied with the final vote,
Of course.
but I participated. I can have ownership in that. And so that builds the sense of connectivity or collectivity, whatever language you want to use for it.
Wow.
And it allows everyone to have more coherence.
Of
And
course.
as long as there's freedom to be able to say no
Wow.
and respect that,
Hmm.
you know, that makes a huge difference. Some of your listeners may have been involved in 12-step programs, for example. There's a notion of a
Yes.
group conscience.
Yes. Hmm.
And and if one person says no, then you got to stop, call safety, put on the brakes, and figure out what to do. Because one person's rights is being violated.
That's
Okay,
beautiful.
it's slower, it's cumbersome, but what's the rush?
What is a rush indeed? What is
The
a
only
rush?
rush we've got right now is to deal with the climate. Everything else we can take our time.
Precisely.
Yeah,
Well,
well, stopping tyranny from taking over, that's also a rush.
that's
So
also a
I,
rush.
I'll rephrase what I said. But in the general scheme of things, we got time to be careful, to be
Absolutely.
thoughtful. At least I do.
And if anything,
Or
there
try
we
to.
have time, and there's one thing to take time with. It's just empathizing. It's just being there for each other. Because we need it the
And that's
most
that
now.
global sensibility.
There you go. I was
That's
gonna
that
say
global
that.
sensibility.
And I wanted to
Oh, go
wrap it
ahead.
around there. I want to come full circle into that, the global sensibility, because if anything, what we really need the most right now is that global sensibility
Yes.
into shaping decisions at all levels. I love how you relate this to business because when people are heard, when people are allowed to say no, then it gives people that voice. They feel valued, and it gives again it gives it has a powerful shift to it, because
It's
now
amazing. You go from confrontation to cooperation.
there you go.
I'm seeing it play out in B corporations. A lot of them are really attempting democracy as much as they
Hmm.
can.
Wow.
That's
Okay.
pretty exciting.
Okay. Yes. Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing a lot of the social entrepreneurs,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
especially people on the ground really doing grassroots
Mm-hmm.
community organizing and
Mm-hmm.
trying to apply what we used to call appropriate technology.
Right. There
And,
are more and more of them, huh?
there's no reason why all electricity has to be centralized, other than
Of
somebody's
course.
greedy,
Of course.
especially with what we know scientifically
Of
and
course.
technologically.
Precisely.
There's no reason why we need a centralized society anymore.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Especially with the
Yeah. Except for
size of
coordination, logistics. It really helps for transportation to have logistics coordinated. There's
types.
lots of stuff that we need that, and machines can help us
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There's
if we let them, as
it's
long as we're in charge of them.
the answers is there really, right? The answers are there. It's just like we have to overcome this massive, massive greed, so to speak. But this is like more like a massive insensibility, right? To what the plight of others and what they are going through, and which I think is what we're really fighting against today. I love that you said that, you are experiencing more corporations, more entrepreneurs influencing this shift a lot more. To kind of start wrapping this up, and we've gone full circle with the
Yes.
global sensibility and the world at large and what's happening around the world. um what else can we do, like individually? What else can we do more to influence this shift and influence this sensibility?
The basics. Think about your waste output.
Of course.
You
Hmm.
know,
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm not zero waste, but I'm doing what I can.
Hmm.
How do you get around? What's your
Hmm.
transportation choices? What can you
Hmm.
afford to do?
Hmm.
Um, if I was in stronger shape, I'd ride my bicycle more.
Right.
As it is, I drive a used electric car because that's all I can afford. You know,
Well,
and
um,
it's you know, but those simple choices. I use light bulbs that don't put off a lot of heat.
right.
I
Okay.
use I don't use household chemicals that are going to harm the environment. So I'm
Mhm.
just thoughtful in my lifestyle.
Right.
There's lots of websites people can go to get an idea of their ecological footprint.
Right.
That's a good place to start.
But Judah,
Um,
a lot of these are very small in the face of what corporations are doing, right? How do you
so we need to
then?
then, that's the next level, is then we need to work together.
There
You
you go.
Search for coalitions of conscience.
I love that.
You know,
Coalitions of
there's lots of
conscience.
organizations that are, you know, how many worthy causes have gone unsuccessful because of the lack of one more willing worker to knock on one more door, send one more email, or drive one more grandma to the polls, right?
Mm. Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Volunteer, volunteer,
I
be
love that.
involved with one's community. One might feel called to leadership in some way, in
It's
which case,
beautiful.
check your ego at the door.
I love that.
It's
I
not
love that.
about power. That's just external validation.
Yes, it
It's
is.
about the value that comes from being of service and
Mm-hmm.
sing the glow in people's hearts. For me, my
Sure.
biggest obstacle has been making that warrior's journey from my head to my
Hmm.
heart.
Wow.
That this distance is one of the hardest gaps for any man to cover, let alone any woman or any person. And we men
Wow.
were trained to be up in our heads and on our waist down, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Our
Wow.
necks up and our waist. Let's connect to our hearts. How can we not have ethics when we can feel ourselves connected to other people?
Of course. Of course. I love that. I love that. Judah, of course, thank you for that insight, that perspective, because it's very important. Because in the face of hopelessness, right? If you look at the world at large, the globe at large, it is feeling quite hopeless. But really, the first and foremost place where we can find this hope, it starts with us.
See, that's why I use the phrase grounded hope.
Wow. There
Grounded
you
hope,
go. Grounded
because
hope.
it's we've got to get past the abstractions. We got to get past someday, somewhere.
Mm,
No, it's
mm,
here and now. We got to take action now. We need to
absolutely.
combine personal growth and social change.
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
we do the two together both at once. I believe we can still take our speeding car and veer it away from the cliff.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
It's scary and okay. The more I feel connected, the less I feel alone.
Yes.
And also, the curious, weird thing that I've discovered is the more I let myself feel that sense of oneness, the
Hmm.
more my own individuality shows up.
Wow.
I don't
There
get
you go.
lost. I just become more myself.
Wow. I love that.
And my individuality, my uniqueness becomes more glorious. And I don't have to be like other people to be okay with who I am.
That's lovely. Wow. I love that, Judah. I love that.
It's a path, it's a journey. I'm still on it.
We're gonna click
So
that.
FYI, it's globalsense.com. I think we're almost done, aren't we?
Oh, it's fine. But I love that clip right there. More of their individuality comes out, the more you connect. But
Yes.
Judah, let me know again, where can we find the book? Where can we learn more about you? Where can we
Sure.
connect, please?
Yes. You can tell I've been conscious of doing interviews in time before. So,
But
but
it's been great.
globalsense.com.
Mm.
Globalsense.com.
Globalsense.com.
Yeah.
Where can we find the book? Is it everywhere on Amazon? All the book,
Uh,
Minder.
Amazon, all the whole Ingram universe. Um, I don't think it's yet on BookLocker in UK,
Okay.
but it's available elsewhere. Um, yeah, actually, it might be. I'd have to check. I'd have to check that.
Well,
But you know, I've got worldwide distribution, and there's a few countries that you can't get it in. Um, that they don't want such ideas. It's not available in Egypt. It's not available in um,
I wonder why.
China. Yeah,
I
I think it's
wonder.
available in the I'm pretty sure it's available in the Philippines.
Okay, well, I'll make sure to grab myself a copy. I also invite our audience and listeners to do the same to grab themselves a copy. Globalsense.com is the website. Judah Fried is the man and the author. Judah, I wish we could dive more into this deeper, but I think you've given us so much insight already in such a concise amount of time. There's a lot in there, but you've given us grounded hope today, and thank you for coming on the show, Judah.
Yeah, I think if I was a listener, I'd re-listen.
Oh, I would too. I invite our audience and listeners,
Yeah.
repeat, re-listen, and of course, Judah, if you're open to it, maybe we could do a longer show on a different show of
I'd be
mine.
happy to anytime.
Absolutely. Well, that would be great. Judah, this has been awesome. This has been wonderful. To all our audience and listeners out there, I hope you found the same insight as much as I did. And Judah, thank you for coming on the show again.
Thank you. I'm grateful to have a chance to give something back.
Fantastic. And to all our audience and listeners out there, see you on the next one.
All right, so here's the thing, we try to get a little bit better every day, but we can't do it without you. So if you like the video, make sure to like and subscribe below. And if you have any comments, just leave them in the space under.